International Day of Anti-Corruption is a vital occasion that unites individuals and organizations worldwide to reflect on the prevalence of corruption and the collective measures necessary to combat it. In 2024, the theme, which is Unite the Youths Against Corruption, highlights the importance of transparency, accountability, and integrity in both public and private sectors. This year's focus encourages the stakeholders to recognize how corruption undermines economic growth, erodes trust in institutions, and worsens inequality. By fostering open dialogue and promoting best practices, communities can be empowered by creating environments where corruption finds no shelter. The 2024 celebration serves as a reminder that each person has a role to play in the fight against corruption. In this program, Nigeria Today, we'll take a look at the fight against corruption, shaping tomorrow's future. Thanks for joining us. I am Ikaria Clinton. Welcome. With me in the studio for the conversation is Reverend David Uolo. He's Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Thank you very much.
Also with us in the studio is Zephaniah Ishaku. Zephaniah Ishaku Bulus is a member, Code of Conduct Bureau, CCB. You're welcome to Nigeria Today.
Good evening. Thank you.
I'll start with you, Zephaniah. We really want to know, you're talking about, the fight against corruption. One would readily ask, how well are we doing in the fight against corruption in Nigeria?
I will begin by thanking you for inviting me on this platform to share a few thoughts. And coming to the question itself, how well have we done in Nigeria? Has thrived very well against corruption. Is that Nigeria has established institutions that are today well recognized in this fight against corruption. If you take away these institutions away from our public life, you would really see that Nigeria would have gone down the line. But with all the institutions and the legal framework set in place, the fight against corruption is top-notch in this country.
Okay, now back to you, Reverend David. Of course, Zephaniah has set the ball rolling by telling us, how well we've done in the fight against corruption. However, I also want to get your own perspective on how we have done or what we are doing, at the moment to nip corruption in the bud.
First, I want to thank the NTA for inviting me to also take part in this year Anti-Corruption Day and also to also share our perspective. First, I want to say that Nigeria have done very well in areas that has to do with asset recovery, which is also an aspect of corruption. Nigeria have gained visibility internationally, and Nigeria is being referenced in most international conferences. As a matter of fact, I'm leaving for Addis Ababa tomorrow for an international expert meeting organized by UNODC. Nigeria is also going to be a reference case for most countries who are still trying to put institutions in place to secure asset return to their country. For Nigeria, Nigeria has built institutions for asset restitution. At the Federal Ministry of Justice, we have the Asset Recovery and Management Unit. I think it's getting to 2 to 3 years now. This unit not only have provided a policy environment that enable the federal government to engage in international asset restitution, and you have seen the impact. For example, in Abuja 2, Nigeria was able to successfully negotiate the return of $325.5 million, which was used for cash transfer program, and over 2 million Nigerians benefited from it. Sometimes people cynical that benefited, But I can tell you, as I was the one who facilitated civil society engagement in the process through the Mantra project that was funded by the UK government and the Swiss government. We were able to deploy over 200 civil society across the 36 states. I can say to you, from Kano, Nasarawa, to Lagos, to Benin, to Akwa Ibom, the poorest benefited from it. And then people will say, what is 5,000 naira? What is 10,000 naira monthly? But the truth is that those who have not seen the benefit can make such skeptical comment. But the reality is that through the Abuja 2, which is the $325 million, very poor Nigerians for the first time in history benefited from the fight against corruption, which is today being referenced globally as a good practice. And the Abuja 3, which is the recent one that was returned back, currently being monitored by the Commission, which is used for major legacy project in Nigeria. One of the first projects is the Abuja Kano Road, and then the Ibadan Lagos Road, the Lagos Ibadan Road, and then the Niger Bridge. This is the first time in history that a country will negotiate the return and use it for project you can easily reference. That for me is a huge success that we should continue to celebrate. Because if we don't celebrate our success story, we will not be able to incentivize the fight against corruption. Otherwise, people will lose hope. And some of us who have been involved in this kind of struggle for the last 30 years, we feel that some of the success that we have recorded, we need to amplify. When we are saying this, has there not been some challenges? There have been challenges, no doubt. And we also point to the Anti-Corruption Agency, EFCC, ICPC, and Code of Conduct. They've also achieved some milestones that we can build on, particularly when you look at the background of the laws setting up these institutions, and then the recent government decision that we now have a Proceed of Crime Act that provide an enabling environment for tackling the challenges of crime corruptions in the country. Okay, this for me is a huge success story for us to celebrate today.
I'll have to stop you here, Reverend Ogolo, so that Zephaniah will also tell us, because his own institution has also been mentioned that there have been some milestones. Yeah. So it's good to tell us some of the milestones you've achieved in this area, because people want to know what is happening to the anti-corruption fight in the country. Because people, of course, if you don't give them the information, there'll be speculations. And of course, they will say from what they feel and not what is on ground. So talk to us about the milestone. And of course, today's theme is calling on the youths, the youth to fight against corruption. So in also telling us the milestone you've achieved, you also tell us what role the youth can play in shaping tomorrow's future.
Speaking from the point of view of the Code of Conduct Bureau, which has been an institution established since 1989, over 35 years, the key areas of achievement in terms of the functions and mandate of Code of Conduct Bureau has actually been in the area of asset declaration by public officers. I can tell you as a matter of fact that no public officer in this country, especially elected, appointed, have assumed their positions in office without first declaring their assets. Now, the key issue of asset declaration is a test on the integrity of public officers. Now, once you declare your asset, it's a test on your integrity. We want to see how transparent you are, how honest you are, even by the simple act of declaring your asset. Now, if you declare your asset honestly and sincerely, it shows that you have integrity. You are good enough to occupy the office that you are voted into or appointed to. So that it is a fundamental area of achievement in terms of asset declaration. I tell you as a matter of fact that we have recorded amongst the political elected officers over 95% success in terms of asset declaration. Now, we are focused more again on ethical values, which is the key area where today we know that the youth can play fundamental roles in. How do we go about this? The youth, as a matter of fact, constitute well over 60% of our population. Now, if they don't join in the fight against corruption, we are talking about their future. It is their future that is important. So CCB, as a matter of fact, is engaging the youths so that the youths will come up with very, very strong way of rejecting and fighting corruption, even at the very early stages. Now, we are looking at this from education, creating enabling environment for them to learn, not only to learn about corruptions, but to also imbibe the culture of fighting corruption. How do they come in? They have a goal, they have a mission to question, to ask questions on integrity. Now, let me simplify it. A child should have the right to ask his parents, how did you acquire this house? Daddy, I want to know, how did you buy this car?
And have they been getting the answers?
So they should get it from their parents. You see, it's a moral burden now on the parents. If your child can ask you a very simple question and say, Daddy, you acquired a car today. What is your position in the office? How did you get money to acquire that? It's a very simple mechanism through which youths can actually fight corruption, can join in this fight by calling to question certain decisions of their parents. Now, Biru generally believes that youths should be engaged in decision making. So we are trying as much as possible to bring to their consciousness the fact that they have every right to question authority, to ask questions, and to seek for answers to those questions that relate to issues of corruption.
Thank you very much. Now, Reverend, you agree with me that as much as he said, okay, the children or the youth, they have the right to ask the elders, how did you make this money? But you know, we have some cultural barriers. There are things you don't ask your father. There are things you don't even talk. There are things you can't say in front of the elders. And even when they ask you, when you ask, yeah, they will just tell you to hush and close your mouth. Culturally, we have some challenge. But now, talk to us about some of the challenges. You know, as much as he said, a lot has been done in terms of trying to fight against corruption.
I think making reference again, using the theme for this year, focusing on the youth, as he rightly noted, the youth are really going to be able to shape the future with the opportunity to engage. And you will agree with me that the environment for engagement is not very friendly. And policies that will strengthen that is very useful. And there are cases that we can reference to and to show that, so that we can draw lessons on how to improve on them. For instance, when the name Zephaniah referenced the fact that all public officials in the country disclose their asset. I am sure that when you say that to the public, if all public officials in the country disclose their asset, the next question will be, do the public have access to those information? Can I go to the website of CCB and click and be able to have access to a member of or the senator that represent my constituency, so that I will be able to use that information to interrogate the kind of building or house he has built in my constituency? It will be good to hear if we can get such information. Otherwise, if it is going to be go to court and get, or can I file in the freedom for information to be able to access? Because if the information is not available to the youth to use for interrogating whether these are false or not, it will be difficult for us to see the value. Then the other one is that when the government do not create the enabling environment for engagement, and that you can draw lessons from the NSAS campaign, you can draw lessons from No to Bad Governance campaign, and the lessons you can draw from all those is that you can see youth that are demanding a system that will be run properly.
But then again,
yes.
in citing the NSAS and
yes.
the bad governance,
yes.
did it really achieve the aim? Because at the end of the day,
yes.
you see the same youth hijacking the same, the protests and the rest of them. At the end of the day, the aim was really defeated. Are there no better ways? No, that brings me to the next question.
Yes.
Are there no better ways of, trying of engaging the government?
There are different there are different elements of engagement. There are those who are engaged in policy advocacy. There are those who are also lobbying government, advocating for certain policies that has to do with anti-corruption strengthening. I mentioned earlier on to you that there are recommendations coming out from the peer review of Nigerian implementation of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. But protest is a fundamental right of the people. If people are not satisfied with certain policy, particularly in this instance, governance system, if it is not properly streamlined, people have the right, and the youth has the right to be on the street. When you say the aim was not achieved, I don't completely agree with you. They must have set up a goal, A, B, C. It's possible they can't achieve all, but certain things, at least they've sent a strong message.
You mentioned dialogue.
Yes.
It's not better.
No, you see, what pushes people to the street? When the opportunity, the civic space is closed. And when the civic space is closed, it becomes pretty difficult for civil society or for the youth to engage. I give you an instance, and this is a visible evidence. Glencoe is one of those international oil company helping to import fuels, oil into the country. You recall that Glencoe was found guilty by the UK court for using their resources to compromise public officials across almost 6 African countries, and including Nigeria. And they cited officials in NNPC. Glencoe. Let's not go there now.
Let's talk about our own issue now and the way forward.
No, I'm telling you the challenge. You asked me for the challenge. I'm telling you the challenge. We wrote a letter requesting disclosure of the identity of these officials in NNPC. As we speak, those officials who are complicit in this corruption in UK, they have been indicted in UK, but our own government have not indicted those who collected the bribe. Because when bribe takes place, there's those who give and those who receive.
We are not talking about
I'm telling you the challenge from the government end, that there is a big challenge. Government must seem to walk the talk so that it creates trust. Because when there is a trust deficit, it becomes a huge challenge to build understanding within the country. Because the impact of not fighting corruption, you can see it in the economy. Because the whole overall implication is that merit will be sidestepped, the youth will be discouraged, people will not believe in the system, and when you don't have people not believing in the system, it has a potential damage to the entire system. And the reason why I think NTA is focusing on this issue today, and that's why we started with the positive side, that why we also criticize the government, but there are also positive side. But it's also good for us to also expose the side that is not very good. And that's why I cited the case of asset declaration. People are cynical about it, because if government say that all public officials should disclose, and because the recent development is that beneficial ownership, people must know what you own. If you claim to own 2 estates, people want to see the linkage between what you are doing that gave you the potential strength to be able to have those estates.
Okay, thank you very much, Reverend Ugolo. Now, back to you, Zephaniah. Now, we're still talking about the youth. Now, how can the youth be empowered to fight corruption in their various communities?
The possible way to engage the youth in this fight against corruption, CCB is coming up now with a very strategic plan. And that strategic plan is that of education. First, you must enlighten people on the dangers of corruption. Secondly, institutions are meant to give the youth the tool, the opportunity to voice out. Now, let's leave the hostile approach to it. Let's have a very sane approach to governance so that individuals are meant to understand from day one what it means to have integrity, what it means to be honest, what it means to be transparent, not only in the public sector, but also in the private sector. Nigerians must understand that this fight is not solely and completely that of the government. It also affects each and every personality. So we must, in all honesty, show integrity. Now, one of the key things is the youths are going to be educated more on this. CCB is partnering with educational institutions so that when we are talking advocacy, when we are talking to the youths, we highlight to them the dangers of corruption and what they can do also in this fight against corruption. The youths are a very critical sector of this country. We cannot do without their participation in the fight against corruption.
No, back to you, Reverend Ugolo. He, of course, has mentioned some of the, how the youth can be empowered. I also want you to throw more light on the issue of the youth, because they are the future. Okay, so how can these youth? He talked about educating them. So I want you to throw more light beyond going to the streets. There are other ways.
Are you scared about people going to the streets?
No.
It's part of democracy.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But then again, we want peace. You and I want peace. So that is what we
You cannot have peace when you have poverty increasing every day.
No, that does not mean that there are not peaceful ways of resolving issues.
Yes, but see...
So what are these peaceful ways
first,
of resolving these issues?
First is to be able to... It talks about education. Mm-hmm. And I remember that if you look the bracket of those who are currently running Nigeria today, 80% of them went to school on free education. It was the state resources they were empowered. But what do we have today? When some of them were in the school, they had free access to water.
So what's the way forward?
They have free access to education. But what do we have today?
What's the way forward?
The way forward is that the youth are speaking very loudly. They have to listen. The government has to create an enabling environment because the civic space is shrinking. When I mean shrinking is that normally before, when you have a democratic setting, there are roles for each agent. You have the role for the opposition party, you have the role for the ruling party, you have a role for the private sector, you have a role for the youth. But government must create an enabling environment for the youth to engage. And then the youth also need to also strengthen their capacity. And the capacity to be able to engage. And knowledge. They must take an advantage of the new power that is emerging. The new power that is emerging is in social platform. It enables youth to access information compared to 20, 30 years ago.
Thank you very much.
Now, with easy access to information, you can be able to build a campaign that can impact on people's development.
Thank you very much, Reverend David Ogolo, Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice. Thank you for your time and your contribution. And also, we had Zephaniah Ishaku-Bulus, Member Code of Conduct Bureau, CCB. Thank you so much for your time and your contribution.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
And thank you for being part of the program. Don't forget, Nigeria Today airs every weekday at 7:30 p.m. on NTA News 24. You can also check out this episode and others on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. I'm Mikaria Clinton. Goodbye.